this on? Can you hear me? No? Yes? Booming, buzzing? Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Alex Foxton, I'm the director at Notting Contemporary, and we're very glad that the NVAN partnership, is that someone else's voice, or a delay on mine coming back? Anyway, our interesting PA. Very glad that this symposium on the idea of success, what we might mean by it, is being held by our network here at Notting Contemporary tonight. I think a kind of fascinating theme, and I'm sure one that won't present itself with any kind of absolute finite answers, and I think it would be kind of very interesting to hear the various speakers from both the network and outside the network kind of unpack it tonight, and both from artist perspectives, or mainly from artist perspectives, but also perhaps from institutional and organizational perspectives. I mean, it's something, of course, we think about as an organization all the time, and we're asked to think about, of course. And I think one of the challenges, maybe particularly with a venue of this scale, is that success is so often measured by the quantifiable. In general, in life these days, so much success is measured according to economic measures. And I suppose, you know, beyond where that's applied to non-economic areas, that's very easily translated into the quantifiable. But I think I would say what really counts, in addition to this, is finally what one can't count. And, you know, of course, quality is, you know, notoriously difficult to measure by measurables. I think towards the end of the evening, Lisa Lefebvre will be giving a talk about how artists have, in their practice, have kind of dealt with the, if you like, the obvious opposite of success, failure in their work. I guess from her abstract as a kind of avant-garde tactic. You know, one's only think of something like Waiting for Godot by Beckett to see how, you know, failure can be kind of deployed as a critical or subversive gesture, or more recently in the visual arts with a figure like Mike Kelly, for whom failure was such an important means by which to undertake a kind of social or cultural critique. So I think that these terms are very, you know, they're complex, they're rich, they come down to what one values, both in terms of what one values internally for oneself, for one's immediate context, as well as kind of externally, and both what one can count and what one can't count, which, you know, brings to mind the relationship between quality and quantity, and art's wider relationship to society, how it engages with society, what society expects of it, and to what extent it needs to create differentiated spaces within it, to really, for art to be what, to art to distinguish itself from what art isn't, other sectors in society and so on, as well as forge relationships with it. So I'm looking forward to hearing how other members from the NVAN group and our guest speakers tonight explore these issues. And it's now my job to hand over to Lucy Phillips, the new chair of NVAN. Thanks, Lucy.
I'll try this one out. So can you hear me? Yeah? Hello and welcome to What is Success? And thanks very much to Alex and to Notting Contemporary for hosting the event here. Thanks too to Liz Hawley, who's the NVAN coordinator, who's made all this possible. So thank you, Liz, who's at the front. For those of you that don't know, NVAN, the East Midlands Visual Arts Network, was formed 5 or 6 years ago, by the Arts Council, who picked out the original steering committee. And it's now part of a countrywide contemporary visual arts network. Over the next few months, MVAN will be creating a new programme to share with our members being artists, arts organisations, anyone that works in the arts really, visual arts across the East Midlands. So if you don't already receive our fortnightly newsletter, please do ensure you sign up for it, because that's the way to take part in conversations, consultations, to find out about what's going on. MVAN's work to date has been about establishing the network, really, and about bringing all our members together. So as well as our social media and our website, we've had a very varied programme of artist development workshops. We have an external critical review of our open exhibitions across the region. We've worked with the Contemporary Art Society, with the Audience Development Agency. We've organised roadshows and get-togethers. We've brought artists and curators together. We've also taken trips out of the region, the most recent one being to Scarborough for the Art Party. And then we organise events like this. They tend to be annual events, these sorts of events, and they have always, to date, involved a combination of people who work and live in the region and also visiting artists. So in the past we've had Donna Linus from the Wising Arts, and we've had Alistair Hudson from Grisdale. So it's quite exciting. We've got a really packed lineup tonight, a real mixture of different people, different presentation styles. We've got a handful of MVAN people, but we've also got Russell Martin from ArtQuest, and later, as Alex says, we've got Lisa Lefebvre from the Henry Moore Institute. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass to Liz, who, as I say, is our coordinator, and I think Liz will be the mistress of ceremonies for the evening, won't you, Liz? Thanks, Liz. Is that what? Not sure if that...
Yes, I'm Liz Hawley, I'm the coordinator for MVAN, and before I introduce our first speaker, I just wanted to bring your attention to the installation we've got at the back of the room and the accompanying film here. Both these pieces are the work of Sophie Cullinan, who's an artist based in Corby. This is a work called Superhero Gadget brackets round of applause close brackets. So if you've got a chance, please do have a look at the work at the back when you've got an opportunity to. Our first speaker is Gary Thomas, who is co-founder and associate director of Animate Projects, which is an agency working out of Derby and London that supports and champions creative animation practice. And he's also part of the film team at the British Council. So Gary, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Yes. Okay, it's a PC. Talk amongst yourselves. Symposium, that was a bit of a shock of a word for me. I don't know, I was talking at symposiums. I like that the invitation came with the word paper in inverted commas. I'm not normally this husky, I've got a bit of a cold. My paper was co-written by Nurofen.
Aww.
But yes, a bit of a cold, but I thought quitting, failing to show up to present something on this subject might be a little too ironic. I'm Gary Thomas. I work for Animate Projects. We're a small agency. We're two of us working part-time. I live in Derby. Abigail, my co-associate director, lives in London, where we actually have a desk in the Office of Forma, which is another arts organisation. We have an intern I've never met. We began as a Channel 4 Arts Council funded commissioning scheme, in which Animate began in 1990, and then we set up Animate Projects in 2007 to continue working with Channel 4, though that soon came to an end. We expanded what we were doing, and generally we champion creative animation practice through commissioning, exhibition online, commissioning texts, online resources, interviews with the artists we work with, and in partnership with galleries and other organisations to present work in the real world. But I don't like saying real world, I mean computers real. Woody Allen said that I googled quotes about success, so shoot me. Woody Allen said that 80% of success is showing up. I'm here, when we think of success, I think we think of it in our own lives, something personal, relative to us. I thought of the song "Success Has Made a Failure of Our Home," covered by Sinead O'Connor, but originally recorded by Loretta Lynn. Success is something personal to us, relative to us, our own circumstances, our conditioning, and so on. And success, in that sense, is important to us, or simply as an indication that we're living in a fulfilling way. However, whatever we may subjectively believe that to mean. But success in our professional context is something different, because beyond the personal, then success immediately becomes something that is us, but is not decided by us. It's decided by others' assessment of what we are and what we do. And my first thought about it was that I'd simply talk about a recent project that we've done that turned out to be what you might call successful in ways that I hadn't anticipated, and in ways that were new to me through the process of commissioning, producing work and working with artists. But for MVAN's particular context, with our common belief in the social and cultural importance of the visual arts, we never have the luxury of forgetting that success doesn't just happen. So I think it's important to acknowledge how our success isn't entirely in our own hands, but the effect of a system. And then also to talk a little about what success feels to me as an organisation. Me as an organisation. This is hegemony. If you don't know the word hegemony, go and Google it when you get home. But this is a board game called Hegemonic. I don't know what happens in it. Art doesn't just happen. How we're supposed to make it and get it shown and distributed isn't accidental. There are economies and economics at play, political, cultural, social, curatorial, technological, that all influence and shape what we're able to do. And to succeed in our artistic functions depends on whether we achieve success in securing the partnerships, audiences, most fundamentally investment that depends upon others' assessment of what we are, what we do, what we have done, what we want to do. Funding bodies, trusts, foundations, sponsors, patrons, politicians, but also sort of the institution of art and the gamut of organisations from Tate down, if you like. Yes, it's a matrix. This isn't necessarily sinister, it's pragmatic. Just getting us all in this room today takes an inordinate amount of organising. There's a business of making culture. Political forces affect economic policies and markets in recessionary, which in turn affects us as a marketplace. In recessionary times, this becomes all too apparent. And we're also subject to the vagaries of habitus too, the persistence of sensibilities, dispositions, prevailing fashions and taste, which benefits some, whilst the rest of us generally acquiesce. Success breeds success, but some contempt too. It's a market, we're competing for a share. If we succeed, others fail. If others succeed, my favourite quote from Gore Vidal. Oh, that's not my glass of water. My glass of water's over there. So what about us, the small guys, the small organisation? What does success mean to us? Do we even know what it smells like? Maybe it smells something like this. It's a new fragrance from Comme des Garçons. It's unisex. It's, I'm sorry, I was going to read it, but I didn't put the word. Inspired, so it's based on the location of the historical finance sector within multi-city, and that would include oxygen, asphalt, I wonder what animate smells like, and I'm going to schedule some time for us to smell ourselves in the next couple of weeks. Although many of us don't concern ourselves or have time to concern ourselves over much with success in and of itself, the fame and fortune that is implied isn't something that we're in pursuit of. Nevertheless, smelling successful is actually very important to an arts organisation, all arts organisations, because it helps us get the money we need to do what we do. It makes our stock attractive. And in the pursuit of finance, we are forever dervishly listing our achievements, distinguishing our worth, offering evidence of the quality and value of what we do and how we do it, our resilience, and of what we want to do, anticipating our success in terms relevant to potential investors' agendas. A challenge for us, Animate, and one which I know we share with other small organisations. I think it particularly affects small organisations and individual artists who are in themselves small organisations, is that this is all very much a distraction. The balance between the core of what we are and do and the work that needs to go into making that possible is an imbalance. And it can feel like not success, but constant failure. Not because an individual application is unsuccessful, and even the successful ones are never enough, but because continually having to justify and explain yourself simply grinds you down. So the choice seems to be between sort of these two quotes. You either, between these two quotes. So far we're sticking with Churchill. But it may be a matter of time. It may be a matter of July. I can't remember the exact date. We can only do what we can do. 3 years ago, shortly after our Animate application to be part of the Arts Council's national portfolio failed, we met with someone who was from outside the arts about a potential project. And they asked whether we were an NPO, and we said no. And their reaction was to assume that that was a choice we had made. And the idea of that it might have been a choice, even though it wasn't, was exhilarating and important to us. Together with the response that we get from the artists we work with, from peers and partners. The notion that it is actually we who need to be in control of our values, our sense of worth. Yes, I'm not going to tell you, I'm leaving that to passing line, I just wrote there. To move on to the art, which is what I really came to talk about. At Animate, we take pride in the way we work with artists, often enabling them to explore new techniques, to work in new contexts. Supporting artists to develop their practice is important, but hasn't been an end in itself. We commission artists to make works. Now, Project Navigation set out to do just or simply that. It's a project about the brain and the respective approaches of medical science and art as to how we understand it. It was funded by the Wellcome Trust, a Wellcome Trust Small Award, and it was a collaboration between us and Painters in Hospitals, a charity that has a collection of art that it loans to healthcare sites, but is expanding its programme to actually commission work. And with a cancer research and care centre in Glasgow. We'd wanted to do something with science for a while, and one of our trustees introduced us to the head of neuro-oncology at the Beatson Institute. And to be honest, my initial reaction was a cynical one. It was great that we had got a scientist, not only a scientist, but a scientist dealing in brain cancer. But I was disabused quite swiftly on visiting, first by being shown the children's waiting room, and then in conversation with artists and the clinical team, I asked about the psychology of working with people who are sick. And the professor said, well, it's not like we're making them better. And up until that point, I thought that was what they were doing. So it was a shock to me, but I wasn't the artist who'd been asked to go and engage and undertake a kind of residency. I'd worked with artists, making work on emotive and personal themes previously, but this felt like quite another kind of challenge, to ask artists to engage with not even a life and death situation, but with death itself and people who are dying. The artists were Ian Gardner, who's an animator, and Alec Finley, who's more famous, and works usually in text and places texts in the world. Neither had previously undertaken projects of this kind. Ian's animation is usually more figurative and narrative, showing in animation festivals and screenings and broadcast. But his navigation films are emphatically abstract and experimental, and the projects positioned him much more in a visual arts critical context. We had hours. Ian chose to work in the lab. We had hours of conversations about the process of that engagement, what it means or didn't mean for an artist to deal with content that is about something that is killing people. And Alec, who himself is ill with ME, worked in the clinical context and met patients. Practically, it's an underestimate to describe the project as a challenge. Getting the necessary clearance for them to work in the hospital took 6 months, by which time they couldn't start for 6 months. By which time it was October. Alec was unwell and couldn't attend clinics for another few months, though he continued to write and blog. And we went through 3 curators at Painting. I'm sure it's nothing to do with me, but the curator at Painting Hospitals changed 3 times, and I was a long way from Glasgow. Nevertheless, the framework that we'd set up, the partners and the partnership and collaboration between the artists and the scientists and the clinical staff worked like a dream. I'm very pleased indeed with the artistic calibre of the works produced. Audiences respond very positively. But the real success is the value of the engagement between artists, scientists and clinical staff, and the relationships established that may well continue. I'm not going to show you one of the films. It's achieved most of the other outputs we promised, the Wellcome Trust, so it's fair to say that it's a success in those terms. There are new works, there are public events and discussions, there's an additional publication of poems. But there are some things you can only report on in a kind of hearsay that aren't necessarily admissible as evaluation or have a box on a form. That people met each other, that people had conversations, that people met and talked who wouldn't otherwise have met and talked, that they were respectful and considered each other, and that they were moved and that they moved on changed. And it's hard to pin that kind of thing down in statistics. In my other job, I'm going to show you. Apparently, I can't show you Alex today, which it's online. Which is simply the word today written in different handwriting, animated several times. When I finish talking, I'm going to show you show Ian's silent abstract work, which he made with material from the lab. In my other job, I work for the British Council in the film team, which is sort of my excuse for having watched Saving Mr. Banks, which is a film about P.L. Travers, who wrote Mary Poppins, and Disney wanting to make the film Mary Poppins, and in which Travers is portrayed as robustly protective of her creations, taking issue with every detail of the character's dress, the historical accuracy of the house in which the Banks family live, and so on. She refuses to engage with the transition of her work to another form. And in one scene, Robert Sherman, who is one of the songwriters, interrupts a diatribe from Travers. I think she's talking about Mr. Banks's moustache, or whether he shouldn't have one, to ask simply, does it matter? And she continues, and he says it again several times, does it matter? Does it matter? Does it matter? And in a different sense, I think that's as good a way as any to assess the success or otherwise of what we do. Does it matter? And hopefully the answer is yes. I googled definitions of the word success. I came up with these three. And my favourite is the third, archaic though it says it is. That's the one I take. An artistic endeavour may have a good outcome. It may have a bad outcome. I don't care, but I do care that what we do should matter. That's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to show you something. It's silent, and it's 3 minutes. Thank you for all being really respectful. There, you got your money's worth. It's not me, it's the computer. Thank you very